Mission Log Live is brought to you by Eagle Moss Hero Collector and their collection of exclusive Star Trek visual reference books and other great titles and gifts waiting for you at herocollector.com/books. Use promo code MISSION10 at checkout for 10% off all books and graphic novels. It's 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, so it must be time for Mission Log Live. I'm Norman Lau, your co-host for this live episode this evening, and with me, continuing her journey through Star Trek Discovery Season 3, is Holly Amos. Holly, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be on this show with you. This is the first time that we're working together.
Me too, yeah. I've only worked with Champion so far. I have to call him Champion. There's too many Johns in Star Trek universe, so I have to call him Champion. But yeah, this is our first time working together, so I'm excited.
Me too. And, you know, there are a lot of Johns, but you know what? There are even more Pauls in our group. Hopefully all the Pauls show up so that we see a huge cavalcade of Pauls. But I just want to say hi to the people that have come into the chat this evening. Hello, Dominic. Hello, Carlos. Carlos, I don't think you're first. I think Dominic is first. At least that's the way I'm reading it. And hello to Narda. So thank you for joining us. I know that a lot more people will be joining us soon. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty earlier on, but Earl is working that out.
Oh, it looks like it's fixed.
Are we fixed?
It's
yes.
Fixed. Yay!
That's because
we just had the wrong header at the top, you guys. It's fine now. It's fine. It's fine.
That's because Earl is amazing. Earl, you know what you're doing. I'm so glad it's you and not me. But as everyone settles into the show, I just want to let you know that if you want to talk live with us here on the show, make sure you click on the Zoom link or use the one tap on your smartphone or call, now wait for it because I usually get this wrong, 669-900-6833. That's 669-900-6833. And Earl is standing by, waiting to get you set up in our call queue. So let's catch up a little bit, Holly, you and I, because I was actually ghosting the last show, and I was listening to you and John, and you are super excited about this show. At least you were super excited about the first episode. I can't speak yet for the second episode, but we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, I mean, the first episode, I gotta say, it's one of the best season openers, I think, and God, how many Star Trek seasons are there? We're almost at 800 episodes. We're like 10 shy of 800 episodes in the franchise right now. Yeah. I mean, obviously, like we'll be over 800 when Discovery ends. But yeah, I think that it was one of the best season openers, and the fact that the first two episodes are completely divided in terms of who we're focused on, brilliant. Good job, writers.
Do you consider episodes 1 and 2 the opening episode, or do you count them as two separate episodes?
I mean, I count them as two separate episodes, but I mean, obviously they had the same thought process where, you know, the first episode, we need to catch up with this character. The second episode, we need to catch up with these characters. And obviously we find out, spoilers, that we find out at the end of the episode that they've arrived a year apart. So totally makes sense.
And I love that. That's such an emotional statement that Burnham, and maybe we'll see this like later on in some flashback sequences, that Burnham has been waiting all this time. What she's been doing for that year, you know, with Book and with and more importantly with Grudge.
More importantly, speaking of Grudge, though, Grudge got the most votes on our poll last week.
I voted for Grudge. I love that.
Which, I mean, the original poll question was supposed to be, what's your favorite returning alien species in Disco? And we decided to put Cat in there, even though it's not. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe Grudge is from another planet. Who knows? Orion's got 13%, Andorian's got 21%, Lorian's, Morn's race, if you didn't know, got 19%, and Cat got 47%. 47. Yay.
47 number. We hit the number. Thank you all very much for voting in and getting us to that 47%. In one of the, yes, you're right, Carlos, the comments are being weird. We'll have that sorted out, hopefully, so we can read more of your comments. But there is a little bit of shade that was being cast in one of Carlos's comments. Norman and Holly. Now we'll get to some interesting commentary.
Wow.
All right, John.
Oh. All right, well, go vote in this. Go vote in this week's poll, you guys. This week's poll is best crash sequence for obvious reasons. So we have the Enterprise D, the infamous Enterprise D crash in Star Trek Generations, which is actually winning right now at 53.8%. We have Star Trek. We have Voyager from obviously from Star Trek Voyager, episode Timeless, which is actually not the main timeline, so they don't really crash. USS Enterprise from Star Trek Beyond, and the USS Discovery, obviously, from this episode that we're talking about today, Far From Home. I did see some people commenting, like, what about the Cerritos? Because we do see the Cerritos crash in lower decks. Guys, we only have 4 slots. I'm sorry. But it's also a really good crash sequence.
You would think that Twitter, with the software sophistication that it has, would be able to open up polls to a little bit more. Because sometimes I like running polls too. And yeah, you're right. Lower Decks had a great crash sequence. It was in Star Trek 3. I know that you had Star Trek 3 originally on your list. And
yeah,
that was...
I bumped it off.
Yeah, that's
I don't know.
Sequence too. But
it's hard to pick 4 when there's several.
That's true. But we were talking about this before the show started. And I think that it just has the most emotional impact when the saucer section for the Enterprise D crashed. There was just so many emotions that we were reading on the screen at the time.
Do you think, well, I mean, that's fair, but I mean, you read the emotions of Kirk when the Enterprise refit crashes too. I think that the Enterprise D is the most emotional for me because I grew up with the Next Generation. Mm-hmm. I can see how people that are a little bit older than us that grew up with the original series would think that the crash sequence in The Search for Spock is more emotional for them.
Yeah, I mean, it was for me. It was for me because I've grown up with that ship, and it takes me all the way back to the 20-hour flyby from the motion picture, and that was the not extended cut. It's a little bit longer in the extended cut.
Yeah,
so you kind of fall in love with that ship all over again.
Thomas is saying the saucer rolls. Yeah, the Cerritos saucer.
It does. Good point. Maybe
Great
that's
animation.
why we should have kept that maybe in the list. Twitter, get on that. Give us at least 2 more slots to put in there. Now, next, coming up next week on Mission Log Live, John and Holly are back. So I'm sorry, Carlos. We'll give you as much interesting commentary as we can. And then this Thursday, Mission Log, the regular podcast, drops with a review of Deep Space Nine's Season 5, Dr. Bashir, I presume.
It's a good episode. I love Dr. Bashir.
I hope everyone enjoys that episode. Holly, I hope you enjoy that episode too.
I will, because I love Dr. Bashir. He's my favorite Deep Space Nine character.
Now, as well, we just I don't want to spoil it. I can't jump ahead in the Mission Log timeline, so I can't talk about what we just talked about.
Womp.
Sorry. Offline. And that's for all you people to listen to when you get a chance to get to that podcast. Now, we're going to jump into the recap because the recap, I tried to keep it condensed, but there's a lot going on in this episode. And I want to get to it earlier than later because Earl's going to be lining up our calls soon. And we want to get to as many callers as we can because I know that there are a lot of people who want to get into this episode. So here we are. The recap from Star Trek Discovery, Episode 2, Far From Home. The USS Discovery emerges from the opposite end of the very same wormhole designed to propel Michael Burnham into the future. However, an unconscious crew roused by acting Captain Saru cannot recover in time enough to prevent Discovery from crashing onto the icy surface of a nearby planet. Standing tall amidst the chaos and despair, Saru reassures his crew that they are alive and together, and that a fully functioning ship is the best way to find Michael. It's time to get to work. Jet Reno believes that the EBS conduits need immediate repair to get the ship-wide systems operational. Tilly has confirmed that life does exist on this planet, affirming that their mission to stop control was in fact a success. Comms Officer Bryce needs a new rubidium translator to repair communications, and, much to Commander Georgiou's desire to have comms repaired first, Saru has made his decision clear. On this strange new world, he and Ensign Tilly will seek out new life and new civilizations, and boldly go into the unknown to find the rubidium needed to repair communications, while the rest of the crew works together to get Discovery systems operational, including a barely fit-for-duty Paul Stamets, who begrudgingly embraces Saru's esprit de corps, pairing up with Jet Reno in engineering, both of whom are gritting their teeth either at each other or their injuries, or both. Setting forth on their mission, Saru and Tilly cautiously follow a mysterious figure who led them to a mysterious compound. Upon entering, they are met at phaser point by a group of miners, suspicious of these visitors, who must be from the crew of the crashed Starfleet ship. Kai, one of the more outspoken miners of this compound, known only as the Colony, quickly realizes that Saru and Tilly are in fact Starfleet officers, and reluctantly decides to help them in exchange for dilithium, which the miners desperately need to power their ships. However, this detente is soon interrupted as Zera, the Colony's supply courier, arrives with his heavily armed cadre and in quick fashion guns down Kai's insubordination and holds Saru hostage as Tilly is forced to retrieve the dilithium from Discovery, risking certain death from the parasitic ice that not only covers the entire planet, but is slowly eating through Discovery's hull. Suddenly, one of Zera's henchmen arrives with a straggler in tow. It's Georgiou, whose instincts allow her not only to assess the threat of what's happening in the bar, but to take swift and decisive action as well, as she neutralizes Zera and his men and thwarts his plan to steal the dilithium from the miners. As she's about to execute Zera, Saru intervenes as he's not about to compromise on the principles of Starfleet and what it means to ensure that their mission success does not come with too high of a moral price. With the rubidium component in tow, Bryce is able to establish communications. Stamets and Reno were also able to get the systems operational with just enough power to try and break free from the ice. But Discovery is just too weak, and to do so, and when the crew felt all hope was lost, a mysterious tractor beam beams them from their icy tomb and hails Discovery. To everyone's shock, surprise, and relief, it's Michael Burnham, who tells them that she's been waiting so long for this moment. She's been waiting for an entire year. The end. That's a lot to handle in one episode.
There's a lot of different storylines happening simultaneously, yeah.
Yeah, and I apologize to all of the Paul Stamets fans out there because his trial to get through the Jeffries tube and bleeding out and his interactions with Reno were amazing. But I really did kind of want to focus on how Saru basically became the captain that I think they all needed at the time. And, as we go forward with our discussions on the podcast, here in Mission Log Live, we still have to talk about the morals, meanings, and messages before we get to some of our notes. And this is where it landed with me, Holly, and I want to see how it landed with you. I said that trust and teamwork is the only way to move forward. The previous rules of the Federation hierarchy and diplomacy have to be constantly reevaluated because the stability of the Federation no longer exists in this era. And the only way to survive and move forward is to adapt to every possible situation as they occur, without betraying the principles that delivered you to this point, but also realizing that an unstable future requires unconventional thinking. Or three-dimensional thinking.
Kind of thinking outside of the box. I think that it's going to be very difficult for the characters to both think outside the box and to adhere to the principles of Starfleet. Especially, we've already seen one baddie come into play, and he really challenged their belief system in terms of how they should be reacting to him. And Georgiou, she's mirror universe, she's Terran Georgiou. So, when she says this is who I am, obviously that's what she means. This is how she solves problems, but that's not how Starfleet solves problems. And I think that it's going to be a challenge, but I think that if they can adhere to it, salute them, because that would be, feels like it's going to be difficult. I don't
know how you felt about it, but it almost, to me, felt like the interaction between Saru and Georgiou, it's kind of like when Kirk was split into two separate pieces of himself, where there's the one that tries to adhere. This was the enemy within, obviously.
The enemy within, yeah.
But there's the one part of the captain that he tried to do the right thing and he always tried to make the right decision, but sometimes second guessed himself. And then there was the evil Captain Kirk, who was all about, he was the ego run rampant.
Right. Mm-hmm. But which we find out in that episode is Kirk needs that ego in order to have the conviction to make the decisions, because we see the good Kirk doesn't have the conviction to make decisions like that. That's what we learn. You kind of need both sides of that. I think what Saru is also going to struggle with, or what he's going to continue struggling with, is even though this is Mirror Georgiou, he served under Georgiou. Georgiou was his captain for a long time. And so to be met with this person who is essentially the same person, but not, I'm sure is doing a number on his psyche about how, it's probably really weird for him to be like, I brought you here. I am the acting commander of the captain of the ship that brought you here, and you have to listen to what I say. I'm sure that's really difficult psychologically for him because this person standing in front of him was somebody who sort of commanded him at one point in time, but not really.
Yeah.
The mirror universe messes me up. They're the same people, but not really.
And I'm sure that when he's looking at her, he's like, my first reaction is to listen to you, but I'm not supposed to listen to you because you're really not my captain. So I can see the struggle that he's having with that. But I also see kind of like his internal struggle where he's like, yeah, you're not wrong, but we still are Starfleet. And we need to follow the Starfleet principles in order to survive wherever we are, whenever we are. And we can touch on that a little bit, probably with our callers. But I'd like to extend to you, Holly, dealer's choice for tonight. Would you like to start off with your notes, and we can we can talk about those, or would you? Like
let's start off. We'll start off with callers, and I mean, my notes are just like I take notes, just like train of thought, and I just kind of insert them as we go along because they're not full thoughts. They're just like pick and scratch of what I was thinking at the time.
All right, so let's jump into our first call. Our first call, we have Chris Bauer. Chris, how are you? And how are things at Channel 4 News?
We're doing great. We've only had like 2 riots in the office this week. So, yeah, good stuff. Yeah, I like this episode. I like sort of the two-parter but not two-parter feel with the premiere. I think this episode also had a really good, and I say this lovingly with respect, sort of platitudes. We had Saru's line about, it is okay to be afraid, but don't let the fear control you, which I think was really nice, especially coming from someone like Saru, who, intimately knows what it is to have fear and to be afraid. And the other one I really liked was Reno's line about being helpless is a crummy feeling, but it's not forever, and it doesn't define you, or something to that effect. So those were 2 really good ones that I liked.
I think touching on Saru specifically, his level of leadership in this episode is fantastic. Phenomenal. Especially in his interactions with Tilly. I mean, obviously, we already talked about him, basically standing up to Georgiou. But his leadership is on full display. He's super calm. The ready room meeting where he decides that he's going to take Tilly, and Tilly is reprimanded by Georgiou because she's sort of tripping over her words, which that's her anxiety, her social anxiety, which a lot of people are really connecting with because there's that representation there. And then she full on insults Tilly's skills and readiness for this. But, I think that Saru choosing her was a good boost of confidence for her. And he even says the reason why I picked you is because you make a wonderful first impression, which is such a nice thing to say to somebody. But yeah, I mean, Saru's level of leadership in this, I mean, he's just really blossoming as a leadership character.
Yeah, and at the same time, I think that it's understandable that I know that Tilly suffers from her anxiety, and that has been on display in the show. But this is a whole different level now. I mean, they know that they don't know where they are. Their ship is crippled.
They don't know where they are. They don't know when they are.
When they are, exactly. And that has to be, I'm going to say this without probably even getting close to the full meaning of the word, but it has to be unsettling in every possible way. And I think that it's beautiful that Saru really, it's not like we just see him immediately become captain. There's something that has always been inside of him that has been able to finally, reach this moment where it's not like I'm choosing to be a leader because this is what everyone needs from me. There is a part of that, but it just rolls out of him so naturally as these are the things that need to be done. I'm going to triage the situation. I need to get the systems up first. I need to make sure the crew's okay. And then we can go out and explore. Because
and I think he sees that in Tilly too.
Right.
He absolutely sees that in Tilly, which is why he's sort of
fostering that along.
Yeah, fostering. That's a good word. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a nice pairing between those two because, well, first of all, the physical the physical disposition between the two, having such a tall, lanky person, and she not matching his height. So even when he looks down, he's not looking down on her. He's very gentle with her, very patient, because he knows that she probably feels much of the way he felt for a long time, which is that prey animal instinct of being a Kelpian.
And when she's saying that, I'm sorry, I'm rambling, like I just do that when I'm scared. And he's like, I know. Mm-hmm. It's a great exchange. And it's so simple, too. Him just saying, I know, speaks volumes.
How did you feel about Saru becoming the leader here, Chris? Did you feel that it's been earned over the last 2 years to this point?
I think because we've always had sort of the Michael Saru dynamic, and they've sort of, quote unquote, co-captain, for lack of a better term, over the past 2 seasons. And it's nice to sort of see Saru come into his own, because I think we've always known he's had this potential. There's a reason that he was first officer or whatever his rank was on the Shenzhou and later the Discovery. Like, he's made his way up. He knows his stuff. But it's nice to see sort of him, coming to his own. And like you guys were saying, those personal connections, the way he sort of, grasps onto Tilly and is like, I get how you feel, but I also know that you are an exceptional member of my team and you have skills that I need right now. And I'm going to recognize both of those parts simultaneously, like the personal and the professional, which I think was really cool of him. So yeah, I like where he's going this season.
Did you have a favorite moment in this episode, maybe more so than the first episode?
Favorite moment, literally anything Jet Reno says.
Are they? I think that this is one of my notes. I think they're doing a really the actor who plays Tig, or her name's Tig, IRL. If you've ever seen any of her stand-up, she's got pretty dry humor. And I think they're doing a really great job of sort of putting that on display. I think my favorite line is just like when she calls Stamets Bobcat. And he's like, Bobcat. And she's like, I don't know, I'm on drugs. It's such a good delivery. It's such a good dry humor delivery. I think she's doing a really great job in that role. I was listening to she did an interview and they were talking about how the character's original name was Denise. And she was like, look at me, I'm not a Denise.
She's not a Denise. At all.
She actually picked the name of the character. Jet is from Joan Jett.
Oh, cool.
Fun fact for you.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But no, I agree with you, Chris. Not to interrupt you, but I agree with you. Like, Tig's doing a great job with that character.
What I loved about... I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's... shameless plug here. That's the pod directive, the one that Tawny and Paul F. Tompkins do.
Yeah, the official one, yeah.
Yeah, that's really great. The other line that was really good was when she's talking to the guy who's cleaning up the goo, and he's like,
Gene.
My name is Gene. I've already forgotten that.
We'll get to that goo part in a second.
Well, why do we remember his name is Gene? I 100% remember because I was like, I wonder if that's an homage to Gene, to Roddenberry.
Maybe. But yeah,
and that guy's totally lower decking it right there, right?
Yeah.
What did she call? She calls him hazmat.
Yeah, hazmat. Cleaning up aisle 5. Yeah.
All right, Chris, we have time for about one more discussion point. So is there anything else that you'd like to talk about for this particular episode? Because we have some callers lining up.
Yeah, I've gone on record as saying that one of my favorite parts about Discovery has always been the care and attention they showed the bridge crew. And I like that we're continuing that in season 3. I don't know what's going on with Detmer, but the fact that Detmer gets an arc at all, I think is really cool, that we're, devoting time to these people.
Do you have any thoughts on what might be going on with Detmer? Because I have a couple.
To me, she just seems sort of generally like shell-shocked and PTSD.
I have that on my list. Yeah. So the 3 things that I was like, okay, PTSD, some sort of hearing loss, and I think the most interesting one, although I don't know if they'd actually do it, would be, did Control get into her hardware?
That's possible. That's a good theory.
I thought about that. I'm like, maybe, but I feel like we sort of wrapped up the Control
that
thing.
arc.
Sort of the the meta game here is like we're doing new things now in season 3. We're in the future.
That's fair, and that's why when I say like I don't know if they'd actually do that, I was like, yeah, we did wrap that up and launched them into the future, but that was one of the things that I was going through. Like, what are my theories of what's going? Because something is very obviously going on with her.
I think personally, like, there's something going on with maybe her PTSD has been re-triggered because this was as bad of a crash as, say, like what happened to the Shenzhou in the Battle of the Binary Stars.
Right. And I mean, what throws me off on all of them, though, is if you watch her when she goes to sick bay, she's told she's okay. All her neurological scans came back okay. She doesn't have a concussion. I was like, well, I don't think that would check for hearing loss. When she walks out of sick bay, Culber is walking towards her. She completely ignores him, and he's very like confused about it. And I was like, "What is this? This is a clue, and I don't know what it means." But yeah, I agree with you. I'm really excited that she's getting a story arc because I think she's a great character.
Me too. Well, Chris, thanks for calling in. And if I have to be completely honest, I do miss your headgear. I thought you were going to show up today knowing that I was here and wearing your traditional headgear. And when we see each other
what is his headgear? I don't know what it is.
Chris, would you like to explain?
It's essentially like a kind of lightweight, like wicking shawl thing that I wear over the entire head. What I do is that, especially in the summer, I'll like wet it down and I'll put it over my head and it sort of wicks and cools myself off. And
that sounds delightful.
I happened to call into the show one time, and when I was in it, I was out having dinner with a friend, and Norm has immediately taken to it. And so I break it out sometimes.
It's a signature statement. It's very bold, and that's just it's headgear, Chris. You know, not the old traditional braces headgear. I'm talking about a brand new fashion statement that you've definitely given your taste and a stamp on here with good fashion sense. So
right.
Anyway,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I just love seeing you, man. I'm just giving you a hard time, but I appreciate you calling in. Thanks for joining the show again.
Of course, anytime.
All right, buddy. Take care.
See ya.
All right. Now, Holly, before we get into the next caller, we have a little business to take care of because we got to take care of the people who take care of us. And we're going to be talking about the Eagle Moss Hero Collector Star Trek Bookshop Collection. Now, I know that a lot of Mission Log listeners, both on the podcast and here, are undoubtedly familiar with the variety of collections of model starships that are gleaned from every corner of the Star Trek universe. I have racks of them myself that you can't see from the bridge. And maybe our listeners are not as familiar with the expanded product line, the extended universe, if you will, of the Star Trek products at Eagle Moss Hero Collector, including a wide variety of officially authorized special edition books published by Eagle Moss and available only online at the Eagle Moss shop. They are gorgeous. They are collectible. I have a few, and sometimes I'm that collector. I don't know if you are, Holly, but I'm that collector.
I'm a collector, but only of certain things. Having worked in the archive, I had to pick and choose what I collected. I do have some Eagle Moss ships, though, but they have so many. Fans who pay a visit to the exclusive Star Trek bookshop at herocollector.com/books will discover a range of definitive visual guides that go as deep into Star Trek history and canon as any books ever published. That is true. We're not bragging. That is true. Mm-hmm. Each extensively researched and developed by Eagle Moss Hero Collector under the supervision of another Star Trek expert, Ben Robinson, who I adore. Yeah. He's great. Ben Robinson is great. Mm-hmm. Books from the Star Trek Shipyard series presents a timeline of almost every ship that has ever appeared in the Star Trek TV shows and movies, from the original series forward to Discovery and backwards to Enterprise. Some of these volumes are dedicated exclusively to Starfleet ships, while others focus on ships from other members of the Federation, including the Vulcans, the Andorians, Tellarites, and the Bajorans. I mean, they hit on some ones that are like super... like you don't see them very often, which I appreciate. Books in the Designing Starship series boldly go where few have gone before, deep behind the scenes into the conception, development, and detail of the ships from every era. There are even volumes of the comprehensive official Star Trek graphic novel collection.
I think they're amazing, and with the ships that I've collected, you know, they have those signature magazines that do the deep dive into all of the different like smaller details and the concept art and even, trivia from the episodes. But what I like about these is that I love collected trade paperback hardcover novels. As much as I love the individual comic books, I love it when they're in one premium hardcover format that I will never open, because that's the kind of collector that I am. I'm a terrible collector. I'm a collector that keeps things on the shelf. Sometimes I'll buy like a second copy just because then I can like get into it and dog ear it. And
I do that too.
I know it's terrible. But you're collectors out there and you know what we're talking about. And so we're talking about, there's everything for a Star Trek fan of every generation that we're talking about. Plus, for friends of Mission Log Live, use Mission 10, as I mentioned earlier, before we started the show, at checkout and receive 10% off all books and graphic novels. To browse around their shop, please visit herocollector.com/books and use promo code Mission10 at checkout for your 10% discount. And now, waiting patiently in, I believe it is the engineering section of the Cerritos, which I'm sorry, Zach, that we didn't talk about her crashing. We have Zach Cody on the line. Zach, how are you? And thanks for joining the show.
Hi, Norman. Hi, Holly. I hope you guys can hear me.
Oh, we can. And I'm like looking really close at your background. It's so good.
Oh, yes. Yeah. My favorite part of the ship. Got to hang out by the workport. First off, I agree with everything that you guys and Chris said about Saru. I think that he's basically captain in all but rank right now. But I also really liked the moments we got with Stamets and Culver this episode. We haven't gotten too much of their relationship outside of like crisis moments, and this was still kind of a crisis moment, but it was a little bit more of them being like nice and together, which was good to see. I would like to get them having these moments without one of them bleeding everywhere for once, but we can get there eventually. It's still early in the season.
There's something that I really liked about what they did with these characters in this episode specifically, and it's because I can really, really relate, is when Culber gets upset with Stamets. There are two different variations of this in the episode where he's like, I'm gonna kill you. Like you need to be safe or I'm gonna kill you. Which is obviously like a juxtaposition, but I felt that. I've felt that before with partners. Like, yeah.
Protect you from yourself, and if you don't, I'll take care of it, I do love how they approach each other in this episode, because you're right, Paul is trying to protect, Dr. Hugh is trying to protect Paul from himself, because Paul seems like, okay, if I can stand up and walk and talk, then I can go do my job. And I love the whole thing. It's like, okay, you can do that if you can spell this out for me. And this is that, it's like, thank you, blah, 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 blah. All you got me with this lousy t-shirt.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you can play the big man here. You can play the hero. I'm just going to give you this one small test. And I'm your doctor. And I have clout over you with that. And I'm also your partner. So I also have clout over you over that. And it was funny, but also serious at the same time. And how serious when you use the hyphen or the missing hyphen in t-shirt to basically not allow him to leave sickbay.
That's 100% something I would do too. A lot of my friends call me Data because I'm so like, they'll be joking. I'll be, but I would do that too. Like, well, actually, t-shirts has a hyphen in it.
Yeah. And I'm going to give you a clean bill of health as long as you do it exactly the way that it has to be done. And it's a nice little trick, but it obviously shows like how much they deeply care for each other, not only in their personal relationship, but as professionals as well, because he doesn't want him to go into Jeffrey tubes and bleed out because the ship got shaken around. I mean, why would somebody let them do that? Because he didn't. And that's why I love the pairing with Jet, because Jet is the same way. It's like, look, my back's trashed. Your insides are pretty much scrambled. We got to work together here, or else we're not going to get our job done. And I found that in this episode, and maybe Zach, you may agree, that there are all these interesting pairings where you don't think there would have been interesting pairings, and they worked for me. I didn't think they would, but they did, because it's in those situations where when you're not comfortable with somebody and you have to work closely with them, if you can focus on what needs to be done, sometimes really interesting, positive things happen, and you start to grow as characters and as people. That's the way I saw it. How did you see it?
I agree. I like the pairings that we got in general. I like that it was more character moments in general through the episode. We got to see a lot more of the bridge crew. The one pairing that we got teased, though, that we didn't get to see was Giorgio and Linus. Like, I wanted to see that scene. That would have been a lot of fun. But I think I get the feeling that we're going to see more of him this season.
God, I hope so.
Especially with another one of his species. I forget what they were called, but with one of them popping up on the Titan, they've got to be up in their brains at CBS. So
yeah,
just see what happens.
I mean, the people that are writing these they're picking out a lot of existing species that we haven't seen in a long time. They're picking out the writers are doing a great job. They're picking a lot of like these random callbacks. I mean, I have to pronounce it right. Cordinanites. That's what the characters are at the colony. That's actually a callback to Enterprise because they appeared in 2 different episodes, Shadows of Pajem and Demons. So that's one callback. Rubindium is actually from Patterns of Force, TOS. So like they're doing a lot of really great deep cut callbacks, which I appreciate.
I'm pretty sure I've mispronounced all of that in my
I mean, here's the thing is like mispronouncing something that you've only ever read is like, that's a thing that happens. Did anybody else notice too? I don't know if this was meant to be a reference, but I kind of think that it was. He said 72 crew members, and then Tilly corrects them and is like 88. Mm-hmm. As soon as he said 72, I was like, oh, are we making a con reference right now?
72 superhumans in stasis.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's still 72.
Yeah.
It's like 72 is the new 47, you guys.
Oh, I like that. That's going to be on a T-shirt. John, Earl, make that a note. That's going to be on our next mug. 72 is the new 47. I love that. But that's a great subtle point, that's a number that I know a lot of people are used to hearing, a crew compliment, I guess, if you will, of 72. So I thought, I love all those little hidden details. As a fan of Enterprise, I'm glad that you brought up those 2 episodes, Shadows of Pajem, one of my favorites, Demons and Terra Prime also.
Although they had really that species actually had super, super different makeup between those 2 episodes of Enterprise. And so the makeup that we see in this episode is actually closer to what we saw in Shadows of Pajem. So it was a choice.
Well, there are always these evolutionary things that are happening in the different series. I mean, for me, and I didn't get a chance to talk about this, about my feelings for the first episode, but the only thing that didn't really sit well with me, and that's just my personal choice, is the Andorian makeup. I felt that the Andorians were maybe just taken a little too far in their interpretation. I love the Klingons in the series. In
the harshness of the angles of like their jaw and their cheeks and stuff.
And some of the added prosthetics where they had like double cheek folds.
Right.
And yeah, because I know that.
Valid, but that's also them adhering to what had already been done because we've already seen Andorians in the Discovery universe. Like they've already been in episodes. So
sure, and it's just one of those. They were so close up, I guess, and I paid more attention to them this time because they were a little bit more prominent. Right. Chasing down Burnham and Books.
I think they're doing that with all. I mean, I love the Tellarites. I think the Tellarites now look how they imagined they should look back during like TOS, but didn't have the ability to do back then. Like didn't have the makeup technology to do. I love the Tellarites. I think it's a great iteration of them.
Zach, did you have
like the Andorians?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No.
I feel like they're almost going more bug-like with the Andorians because, like, just off of the antennas, they're kind of like if you see like different kind of mantises, like their faces have those little angular juts coming out. And
that's
like
true.
You watch the nature documentaries, and they've done stuff with the voice for the Andorians. There's like a modulation on it. At least there was when we saw them last season. I don't remember if there was last episode, but I'll have to rewatch it. But they're doing different stuff. I don't know whether I like it better or worse than Enterprise, but I like that they're doing new things.
I just like that they're calling back to Enterprise at all, if I'm being honest. I think Enterprise is so overlooked.
It's one of my favorites.
Definitely.
Holly, we'll have to kibish about Enterprise, our love for Enterprise, because I love Enterprise, and I'm glad that it gets. I'm glad that it gets referenced because it is part of the universe, and they're using all different types of callbacks, as you say. And I love. Okay, so here's one thing, and this is something new to me, and it's not necessarily a callback. Maybe we've seen this weapon before, maybe we haven't. But what did you think of Zera's pulse weapon that tortured Cal? Did I get that right, Holly? Cal.
It's
I
Cal.
got that wrong. You know why I got that wrong? And I'll be honest with you. I'll be honest with all the listeners because I'm not wearing my reading glasses. And L's and I's look at the distance that I'm reading right now look exactly the same. It's horrible. I'm so sad that I have to wear them. But anyway, Cal, he wasn't shot. He was tortured. That was a torture gun.
And I'm so sad because the interaction he has with Tilly is so sweet. And I'm like, oh, Tilly's got a boyfriend. And then he dies. And I'm like, oh, well, that's unfortunate. But, we were talking about this before we came on the air, is like he uses that weapon on Georgiou when she busts in, which, by the way, I'm pretty sure this is the first Michelle Yeoh fight sequence that we get in Star Trek. And I'm very excited about it. I'm so excited that we got a Michelle Yeoh fight sequence. But she just gets basically what I would consider like set to stun, and he freezes her up, but she doesn't die. What he does to Cal is so mean. I feel like when you set a phaser to kill, people disintegrate, and that's rude. But I also feel like there's not a lot of torture or pain in that process. Like, it happens pretty quick. This was really mean, like super mean. I just, obviously not the ideals of Starfleet, but they're not Starfleet, so.
I almost thought that it was a callback to the Most Toys from TNG with that guy that steals data and puts him into a menagerie because he has some kind of phaser that's been outlawed because it's too torturous, and he does end up killing someone, and it she gets vaporized and it lingers a little bit. So I almost felt like this was a reinterpretation of that.
And that's 100% why they outlawed it, is because it's not a quick death, and it's not like you feel it, like you are torn apart from the inside out. And he does kill somebody, and you watch her, like, it's not quick. The other one that I'm thinking of is also a TNG episode where that they have that course of people that are speaking for the deaf character, and he has 3 of them, and his course gets vaporized, but it happens pretty quick. I mean, you see it and they're gone, and it doesn't seem like they really suffered.
Yeah, that's right. They turn into skeletons, right? And then they just
sort of, yeah, and then they
at them.
Disintegrate, yeah. But it just it's so mean.
Because I'm trying to place like the technology sometimes. Now I like the sonic disruptors that they had in a way in the first episode, and then obviously, like Tilly said, she made mention of something about like put down your phaser and we can talk. But this weapon, though, it was almost kind of like it was an extension of Zera's attitude. Like, okay, I don't like what you said, Cal, and I'm really kind of tired of you like now speaking up and being subversive and trying to raise, this attitude against me. He just kept, you know what I mean? It's like an extension of his meanness in a way. But for Georgiou, she thought it was foreplay. So I love that line.
I mean, it's a great line to reinforce that she's not from our universe. She's from the Terran Empire.
Yeah. And that's a great point, because I know that I've read some things online. I try not to read too much into it online, but they're saying like, how could she possibly do what she did if she got shot several times by this same weapon? It's like, because she's not from our universe. She's a different person. She's a different, I wouldn't say species. Would you say species?
No, I mean, she's human. I do know that, they obviously they talked about having their eyes are a bit different from ours. And that's one of the giveaways that we had. That's
how. She's a different type of human.
Right. Yeah. But has she endured more pain? Probably. She has a higher tolerance for pain. I would say that 100%.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, coming out of that universe. So, but yeah, the weapon that he's using, maybe we'll learn more about it. It's a real rude weapon.
Now, Earl came in because he's our producer and engineer. The episode was Loud as a Whisper.
That's the TNG episode where the character has 3 course members that talk for him because he's a mute.
Now, Zach, I got one more question for you before we have to let you go, but I do love Holly's theory that Detmer in some ways may be influenced by whatever remnant of control may have still been in the ship. What do you think about that? I find that very interesting.
I don't know if they would do that, though. Do you think that they would do that?
It could take on a completely different form, though. It may have in some way mutated, if technology can do that. And I don't know. I just find it that they focused on something about her that went wrong after she was launched over the comm system or her station. And
yeah, during the crash.
Right. You know, she wasn't quite settled. And even though the medical scan said that neurologically she was okay, she wasn't okay. There's something there that's happening.
Well, I mean, and the other thing that I focused on when she was in sick bay is that, you know, she said your neurological scans came back normal. You don't have a concussion. You're free to go. And I was like, was anything else checked? Because my other thought process was that she might be going deaf, which is not something that's checked from a neurological standpoint. What they're checking your spine and your brain, and that's about it. You know, I've had a concussion, and they're not fun, but I don't remember anybody checking my hearing. So she could be going deaf, which also could be a result of something else too. I'm super interested in it. Like, they've set it up with the teases that they set up with the few scenes that Detmer's in and the sort of clues that she's giving away. I'm super interested in her storyline and where it's going to go and what's actually wrong with her. But I don't know if they would do like the control thing being in her. I don't, and if they did, I don't know how I would feel about it. Would I'd be like, oh yeah, that was a great idea, or I thought we wrapped that up. Maybe
a little too extended in that storyline. Maybe we should have just left that behind in the past. The way they sacrificed everything to get it out of their system, out of their timeline, I should say.
Maybe.
Yeah. You know, we're having a little bit of audio trouble with Zach. Zach, are you still with us? Can you still respond to us? Because we have him on the line, and it's unfortunate that he won't be able to respond to some of our comments here. And we appreciate you calling in, but maybe you could just look over your shoulder, see if Billups has a solution for you, since you are kind of like hanging out in engineering with him. Maybe. But until then, though, we'll keep you on the line and see if things clear up a little bit. But Holly, I would love to get to some of the points that you had here in your notes, because I do like there's some things I think that are worth exploring here.
My weird train of thought. I do have a note in here that this is literally all it says. It says programmable matter. I want some.
Programmable matter.
We see programmable matter in both episodes. In both of the first two episodes, we see it obviously with Sahil and his on the station, and he has the bed that goes away, and we talked about this at length because it was a really cool sequence. Mm-hmm. The bed that goes away, his desk that comes up, awesome. But we see it in this episode where Cal is remaking the unit that Tilly brings to them to fix their comm system. And she makes a comment I've never seen anything do that before. And he's like, this is programmable matter, which is apparently we're finding out that they use that for a lot of stuff. And why wouldn't they? It's great.
If you have that kind of technology now, they're kind of teasing at in the future. It's going to be interesting to see where they are with, say, replicator technology. Obviously, they have personal transporters, which jumps the technology that we're used to, or at least they're used to in their timeline.
Not the Kelvin timeline, though. The Kelvin timeline, they have personal transporters.
True enough. I know that there are discussions about that, but hey, you know what? Why not? I'm a kind of a why not. Someone obviously has been able to create some use out of it. And are we talking about John Harrison's personal transporter?
Yeah, and Scotty talks about it he talks to Kirk and Spock, is I found this in his jump ship, and this is what he used, and are you sure? And he's like, yeah. The Kelvin timeline is so interesting from the standpoint of if you read the comic books. I don't know how many people are reading the comic books. There's a lot of backstory for the Kelvin timeline in the comic books, in the Khan series and in several other series, that sort of fills in why their technology is actually so advanced in comparison to the prime timeline at the same time. And it's literally as a result of Nero coming through and attacking the Kelvin.
Right.
And they feel like they have to go out and like collect more. That's why Khan is found differently. You know, someone else finds him, not Kirk this time around. And, you know, why was he out there that far? And, we were looking for better technology. And
what's the arms race? It was the arms race kind of.
Right. That's a good way to put that it was an arms race. So that's why, we have seen personal transporters in the Kelvin timeline. But, in the prime timeline, this is new technology with them being even before, they fall into... Not now, they're, 1,000 years into the future, or 930, whatever it is. But, they're actually before Kirk. So they've never seen this before.
One step further, I do remember reading kind of like the Countdown comic books. And it makes more sense because that was I guess it was kind of like a Shanghai Borg technology that they infused into, the Tal Shiar, they infused that into the Narada before the Narada was sent back. So now you're not just getting future technology, you're getting future Borg manipulated technology, which is like, if you can re-engineer that or reverse engineer that, you're definitely having a leg up.
Yeah.
In the arms race.
The comic books, like, not to toot the comic books horn, I'm going to toot the comic books horn. The comic books are really, IDW does a really good job at filling in sort of information that we don't see on screen or storylines that would take too long to explore. But they explain a lot of stuff. If you're not reading the comic books and you're interested in like, why this and why that, it might be answered in the comic books.
And I know we didn't talk about it in our ad, but Eagle Moss Hero Collection, they do create this really gorgeous trade paperback novel set of many of the comic books. I can't say that they do it for all the comic books, but if you collect all of them, they create this fantastic mosaic across the spines of their books.
Oh, yeah, the spines, yeah.
Oh, my God.
They do.
If I only had the room and the money and the time to read all of those. Now, I like what you said here. Tilly's offer of dilithium based on her observations is very astute.
I mean, she's a little bit Sherlock Holmes in this and her deductions, right? So we know as the audience, we know about the burn. We know that for whatever reason, there's not a lot of dilithium in the universe, that most of it exploded on some went poof one day. The characters on Discovery, though, they haven't been told about this yet. And so we see that sequence with Tilly walking through the corridor with Saru, and she's like, I don't know what planet we're on, but it's not the right one. It's not the one that we thought we were going to end up on, but there is life, and that's good. But also, like, there's like warp-capable ships, and like I'm reading warp-capable ships, but then I'm not reading any dilithium readings. And so for her to put all of that information together and deduce in that moment while they're in that bar to be like, we have dilithium, right, is so astute of her. And I again, we were talking earlier about whether or not she would be captain material. 100%. You could say that she is captain material based on that deduction and interaction alone.
Well, she's definitely like opening herself up to like absorbing as much information as possible, and that's kind of like the great the great comparison between like her and say Georgiou, because Georgiou wants action first, and Tilly, much under maybe Saru's tutelage, is like, well, no, let's assess the situation first. We can always go into action. It's not like we're not trained to be, to be able to defend ourselves if necessary. That's like one of those Starfleet mantras. We are on a mission and exploration of peace and discovery, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. And the threat wasn't there. So she was trying to use as much to her advantage to be able to say, you know what, we have a problem, you have a problem, let's work things out. And amidst all the confusion of trying to still figure out when they were or when they are.
Yeah.
Like, why isn't there dilithium in these warp-capable ships? What happened to them? Where's Michael? We don't know where she is yet until the end.
Right.
There's so much at stake here without trying to do the one thing that Saru is trying to stop Georgiou from doing, is that's to eliminate any possible avenue of diplomacy.
Right.
Right?
I mean, in this, obviously, her offering up their dilithium, potentially could cause a problem later, because she doesn't know that. She doesn't know why.
Right.
She knows that for some reason there's not enough dilithium. She doesn't know why though. So, I mean, she could assume that it's, being held hostage by some crazy baddie, and they'll solve that problem later. But literally, like, not a lot of it exists anymore. So, she doesn't know that, like, giving it away, I feel like that might cause a problem later on.
Well, it's interesting that, say, one of the more kind of ubiquitous minerals in the Federation has now become like one of the rarest prized possessions that anybody can barter for. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting way that they're going to like move forward with this. So in the last few minutes that we have here, what are your expectations or what do you anticipate to see as we follow up this storyline in episode 3 in People of Earth?
I mean, I feel like they need to go back and show us what Burnham's been doing for the last year.
And do you think it's going to be done in like a parallel storyline, like another Burnham book and Grudge story, or are we going to try and get them all together sometime in this episode?
I don't know. And, thinking about it, like, I'm not sure if I can answer like what I would prefer in terms of storytelling at this point. But I do think that, one of the major things we're going to have to say, I mean, they might do a whole other episode just on Burnham and what she's been doing with Book and Grudge. Mm-hmm. I don't know. We'll see. But, I put this in my notes too, that like only a year elapsed for Michael Burnham waiting for Discovery to get there. And I keep thinking about how Nero's crew in Star Trek 2009 waited 25 years for Spock to come through the black hole.
And
a year is not that long.
a lot of grudges were built up in those 25 years with.
Yeah, and a year is not that long for her to have to wait. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that turns out. But I feel like we're gonna have to see what she's been doing for the last year. She's probably adjusted to the, because what is she going to do in that year? Like, she's going to have been looking for Discovery, but she needs to find a way to kind of survive. So I'm interested in seeing what her life becomes in this new timeline, because there's no Starfleet. She can't go back to that. Like, what is she going to do? Probably become a traitor.
Well, it was my impression that at the end of the first episode, when she, when they unrolled the new Federation flag, I'm kind of hoping to see like what kind of endroads in a year that she was able to establish to try and find Federation sympathizers to bring to their cause. And the Discovery, the Discovery would obviously be a huge boon to them, because it's like, look, this was our tech that we used to bring the Federation back. Now, I know that on social media, and I posted this too, I'm a huge fan of Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda, and I find similar parallels to that story. I'm not saying that the entire story now moving forward is going to co-opt that, but I do love the fact that in a hopeless future, in a hopeless situation, the hope of the past is going to get, well, to use their catchphrase, hope lives again. And there was a lot of mention of the word hope. And there's a lot of mention, or at least in the attitude as seen with Saru, like, we can't despair. We can't fall to despair, or else we lose everything that we are about being Starfleet. Even if Starfleet doesn't exist, the spirit's still alive.
Right. They want to hold up. They want to hold up those ideals.
Yeah. And for me, that it feels so very Star Trek when they focus on those quieter moments where it's not a ship, it's not a fleet, it's not an armada. It's not this congregation of planets. It is the spirit of preserving hope and moving forward, with diplomacy and trying to bring people, into this wonderful, conglomeration of worlds.
Right. And I feel like what they're going to find coming into this is sort of like a Wild West. Like, we've already seen that, right, in the bar. The bar is literally like a Wild West comparison. Right? Yeah, he walked in with spurs, and I was like, okay. And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, and then there's like a full-on bar brawl. I mean, there's a really good comparison to, like Fistful of Datas. Like, it's full-on Wild West. And so I think that them coming into that time and needing to sort of stick to the ideals of Starfleet so that they can reestablish some sort of order, with also the challenge of there being no dilithium, which at the end of that episode, they still have not heard about the burn. Am I wrong?
They have not, or at least they don't understand it fully.
They don't. They know that dilithium's not there for some reason, or it's sparse, but they don't know why. They're not told about the burn yet. So
Yeah, all Zara said was, he goes, the burn was great for me, but he never really went into it. He didn't
go into what it actually was. So
right, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that it'll be interesting to see. I really enjoy from a story writing standpoint. I really enjoy as an audience knowing something and the character's not.
Yeah, because we are, in a way, the characters are the extension of us, or we are the extension of the characters. We break that fourth wall when we're just as much in the dark as they are, because we're trying to figure out our way along mentally, narratively with the show. And I think that it provides a deeper connection to what they're going through as we're going through it as well. Not everything has to be answered all at once. You have to savor what's happening, and you have to, cherish what's going to be happening, in the future. The one thing I do love, though, is because I'm a huge Firefly fan. I love the fact that I'm seeing or hearing the name Book mentioned again in science fiction, in something that is embracing Wild West roots, very much like Firefly did, and very much like Star Trek did. It was the Wild West of space.
Yeah, the wagon train to the stars is
the wagon train to the stars.
Is what Gene described it as. Yeah.
Well, we are at the hour. Holly, it goes so fast. We'll have to do this again sometime, perhaps in
2 weeks.
2 weeks. And see where this journey takes us. And I do want to apologize to the Facebook viewers who have stayed with us but weren't able to engage in the chat. Something happened in the chat. We do apologize, and we'll try and have that all fixed for the next show when John and Holly are back on next week. But until that time, thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for our callers for joining in and participating. And thank you to Eagle Moss for supporting the show. And I just want to make mention that the pin that I'm wearing, if I could point to it, pin is sponsored by cufflinksinc.com. So thank you everyone for joining us. Mission Log Live is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Executive producer Rod Roddenberry. Technical production on Mission Log Live is done by the incomparable Earl Green. Be sure to visit roddenberry.com for the latest from the Roddenberry Podcast Network. If you'd like to support Mission Log directly, give us a look at patreon.com/Mission Log. Thanks to everyone for joining us live or joining us later. Thank you, Holly, for a wonderful show. It was a pleasure to work with you for my very first time.
You too.
And I can't wait for us to do this again. So everyone out there, please stay safe. Please stay healthy. We look forward to talking with you next week.